Let me give you, if I can, just what I think are 3 climate change basics, also by way of background. So, Francisca, you mentioned earlier that markets fail. I agree with you. This is a classic example of a market that fails, and it's obvious why that should be, because those of us who are producing the activity which in turn leads to greenhouse gas emissions, we're not paying the price for it. It might be future generations. Unfortunately, they're not here at the table to get involved in that debate. So it is a classic market failure, and it is where public policy is really needed. Now, another, I think, important fact here is that many people are arguing for a target, a limit of 500 parts per million of carbon dioxide equivalent. So that's the whole greenhouse gas thing. Today, we're at 430. It's worth getting into that debate a little bit, because that is quite, there's another of an argument here. Is 500 the right goal? But let me tell you, 500, the scientists predict that there's a 96% chance of only a 2-degree rise in average global temperatures, and only a 3% chance of a 5-degree rise. So very small possibility of a very small possibility of a 5-degree rise in temperature. If you raise that target to, say, 650 parts per million, the chances of that 5-degree rise in temperature go up to 25%. Now, is that a risk we really want to take? I'm not sure. We definitely need to my third point, we need to focus, yes, of course, on the costs of taking action, because there will be a cost. There will be a cost to us as economies and society. But we also need to consider the risks, and there's been much discussion of the risks. But has there been much discussion of the benefits? Wouldn't we actually prefer a collaborative, cleaner, quieter, more biodiverse, safer world where fewer people live in poverty, which in turn provides a better market for our goods and services? Because there's a good argument that if we don't tackle this, then there isn't going to be. It's not just unbridled growth. There will be serious competition for resources, and it will constrain our ability, to be very parochial about it, it will constrain our ability as an industry. So there's a need to balance costs, risk, and benefits of do something, do nothing. There's another bit of background, last bit of background before we move on to what needs to be done. I seem to be particularly inept with this today. The thing to draw from this particular chart is that 63% of emissions, which is everything from the blue one for 27, go round the circle until you get to the next blue one, fugitive emissions. 63% are energy related. So 2/3 of emissions are energy related. It sort of points us to where we ought to be focusing our attention, and where we as an industry ought to be focusing our attention. Now, there's an excellent body of research which has culminated in a document produced by an economist called Nicholas Stern. Nicholas was the chief economist in Her Majesty's Treasury in the British government, but he's also worked at the World Bank, and he now works at London School of Economics. And he led the Stern Review for the British government, and he's built on that work and produced something he calls a blueprint for a safer planet. And I really like this research because it sets out four areas. He describes the actions as falling into 4 areas, and I just want to look at these 4 areas and then go on and talk about, well, what's the role of ICT in these. So let's explore what each of these 4 mean, first of all. So improving energy efficiency. Now that's particularly in, obviously, I've just talked about energy being a big area, so improving energy efficiency in energy production and distribution, but also in buildings and transport. If we tackle those 3 areas, we make quite a big dent. Reversing deforestation. I don't think many of us realized that the two countries of Brazil and Indonesia alone, if we could reverse the deforestation, it would have a greater impact than dealing with road, sea, and air transportation. So very important action. The third one is really bring technologies that are nearly there, bring those to work, especially renewables, carbon capture and storage, and also the transport-related technologies. A lot of transport that aren't very far away need to be brought from pilot phase to mass rollout. And then invest heavily in new technologies, so new solar, photosynthesis, and again, especially the energy-related investments. Now, it's interesting that the International Energy Agency has estimated that in any event, the investment that's needed in our energy infrastructure around the world is $1 trillion a year for the next 20 years. So why don't we focus some of that investment in, and of course we will, but that's what we've got to do, focus some of that investment in these newer technologies that will reduce energy efficiency. So let's just look at how ICT plays into these various areas of energy efficiency, reversing deforestation. Now, I put on here reversing deforestation. We don't have a lot to play in. Of course, our industry likes to argue that we play in everything. So they would argue, well, no, we're monitoring deforestation at the very least. But as you can see, I think we have a role as an industry to play in all four of these actions. Is this what governments are worrying about, though? Is this how they see us? OECD carried out a survey recently of green ICT initiatives. And of course, what they found is that there were 91 initiatives. And the majority of those were looking at IT's impact on the carbon footprint rather than the role of IT in these other areas, completely missing the point. So to my mind, one takeaway for us as an industry is get the policymakers focused on what we can do for other people, not on reducing the carbon footprint of data centers. Albeit that is very important, it's not where the big wins are going to be made. So what you're doing here, Jim's very important, but there are other things you could be doing as well. So let me draw this to a conclusion by just giving you what I think needs to be done. I think the only way we'll deal with this iron law of economic growth will always win out over climate change policies is to put the economy departments at the heart of the climate change policy making. For instance, there's a lot we could do with tax incentives to encourage the right sort of innovation. We need to encourage policymakers to see ICT as a solution and not a problem. We will get on with that stuff, as you will hear in a moment, but let's have us being seen as part of the solution. And use networks like WITSA and its GICT to develop and benchmark standards, discover and share solutions, and disseminate ideas. So look, what I've told you about here is I've set out some of the backgrounds. I've laid out some actions that I think we should take and what the ICT involvement could be in that. I've said that government focuses around the world focuses on us the wrong way. We're not shirking our responsibilities, but they need to focus on us as part of the solution. And we need, particularly the economy departments, to be in control. And if we do those things, I think it isn't a choice. I think we can generate green growth, and I think that green growth will be good growth. So thank you very much for listening to me. Let's hear now.